Okay. Now.
Thank you for joining us tonight. This is the Planning Committee meeting from Town Council. I'm Steve Tanner. I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. We want to make our meetings available to as many people as possible, regardless of whether they are using a hybrid setup in person here at the Town Hall Chamber or online via Zoom. For those in the room, a little housekeeping. The emergency exit is to the rear corner of the room and the assembly point is in the car park. Toilets are accessed through the end of the corridor on the right-hand side, or there is an accessible lift, accessible toilet to the right of the lift. For panelists on Zoom, please use the electronic raised hand by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. For those in the room, please raise your hand. For attendees on Zoom, please pose questions through the Q&A board. Attendees' names will become visible on the questions board for the record as your question is answered. For those attendees in the room, please raise your hand. Tonight, Jane will be clerk and Hannah will manage the questions board and participant settings. The meeting is being recorded for minuting purposes, and we also to our YouTube.
Okay, so Helen can hear us. She is online. So
right.
Even though it's beeping, it should work and it should stay still now, hopefully. Okay.
So, agenda item number 1, questions, comments, information from public or councillors that aren't on the further appendix. Is there any other questions or anything? No, great. Apologies for absence and declaration of members' interests. Excellent, thanks, Hannah. Right. Thanks, Rich.
Trustee, and I've been negotiating.
Oh, right. Yeah. Retreat. Yeah, sure. And item number 3 on the agenda, to agree the minutes of the meeting held the 1st of November, which I have here. Any comments? No. We have to vote on these, don't we? Yes, if I could get someone to propose them, please. Thanks, Rich. Seconded by Mark. All those in favour? Thank you.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, so on those. Great.
Any councillors? Right.
Do they vote if they're on Zoom?
No.
Excellent. Agenda item number 4, to consider the major plan applications received. And at that point, I'll hand over to Jane.
Thank you. Questions, comments, and public.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Very quickly.
We're going to start with application number.
Sorry, hang on a minute.
What?
Julian's here to talk about the tree.
Yeah. You want to do the tree first?
I don't know.
Okay. I think it'll be quick. Okay. Apologies. Slight change in running order. So we will start with
697.
number 697 on our list. And the address is 21 Wallbridge, Froome, and it's for the felling of a cedar tree. The reason given for the felling is due to an insurance claim, which they say is impacting on the house that it adjoins. And actually, I think if we hand over to Julian, if you're happy to, Julian, just to talk about the tree, would you like to come up to the table? Yeah.
Okay, your mic will pick you up then.
Okay.
Grab a seat
chair.
if you want.
Okay.
That naughty step.
So, hi. Yeah, thanks for letting me speak. I'm here to talk about Cedar 11 tree, which has a planning application to fell. I think this has been going on for a year or so. As you say, it's because of a subsidence cause on the house. So there are stages that has to go through. It's gone through all those stages. They've done a prior examination, which then needs to have boreholes made in the ground, which showed that the roots of the tree were extending to the house, which of course they are. The tree's right there in the front garden. And then there was an arboricultural report which suggested removing the tree because it's according to them, it's causing the subsidence because of the amount of moisture that it's absorbing, drying out the clay soil underneath. So there is an engineering, there is a piece of engineering that can solve the problem by putting in a root barrier, whereas basically you're stopping the roots from encroaching on the house. But the company who've made the report suggested that would be £30,000 to do that. So obviously that, for them, outweighs the cost of keeping the tree. So this is a route often followed by insurance companies, I have to say. It's the standard route. Take the tree out. I'm making objections about this tree because it is a special heritage tree of Frome. The house was built in 1860. I would suggest the tree was planted sometime shortly after that. So there's another cedar of Lebanon on the other side of town, which was actually planted by Thomas Bunn, who is the philanthropist who tried to improve Frome, and as part of the improvements, it was planting the cedar of Lebanon. So most of those got lost. We've got two that are basically on display to the public. One in this part of the town, Wallbridge, and one at this top end of the town. So they are heritage trees of Frome. I mean, they've been there for 160 years or more. So mature, beautiful trees. You know, they're specimen trees. So there is a thing called Caravan, which they use in London because they've got so many thousands of trees they have to deal with on this basis day to day. They designed Caravan, which is basically puts a value on the tree against an insurance claim, because that's the way you can balance it and say, well, look, this tree is worth so much. So there was a Caravan made on an oak tree on Stonebridge Estate last year, and that Caravan value for a big mature oak was £100,000 pretty much. So I would suggest this tree, without having done a Caravan, I would suggest the value of the tree would at least be half that. So you could balance that £50,000 against the £30,000 to build the root barrier, if you like. But more than that, it's culturally important. It's environmentally important. Of course, both Frome Town Council and Mendip District Council have both committed to securing the future of Frome environmentally. This tree has been absorbing water. It's been absorbing carbon for 160 years. So think how much carbon that's absorbed over the years, and providing habitat, of course, with biodiversity is equally as important. And there are, one by one, we are losing our heritage trees in Frome. There's no doubt about it. And some of them we've managed to save, others we haven't, depending on the planning application and balancing whether it should, whether the target area, if it might fall on someone, etc., is worth the risk. Sometimes it's not. Now this tree, if you lose this tree, you've got one cedar of Lebanon in Frome, basically. We've already lost the Great Beech in the churchyard, horse chestnut down in the town centre. We're getting less and less heritage trees, and you can't replace these heritage trees with young trees. It's really good to replant, we all know that. But these trees, older trees, they give so much more. I mean, for instance, an oak, a veteran oak will provide give as much biodiversity as 1,000 young oaks. That's the difference. It's not tenfold, it's not 100. It really is a massive difference. So I'd like to see if there is any way that we could save this tree, because and I've had a lot of messages today because I put it out on social media. A lot of concerned people who walk past it every day. It's part of their environment. The local environment will be at great loss to lose this tree. So I'd like to see if we could do something.
Thanks, Julian. I'm on side.
Okay.
Thank you, Julian. I don't think anyone's
coming in, Julian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. What is that, isn't it? I don't know as much else. Sorry.
Okay. I'd like to get a quick question. I don't know if you can answer it, Julian, but presumably if planning permission is refused, would that mean the insurance company would have to cough up the cost for the root barrier, do you think?
Yeah, and that's the root of it, really. So, no pun intended.
No brainer in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it then, yeah. That was
Okay.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So
Straight objection.
So it's
First.
straight objection, and the fact that we would a root barrier must be used instead rather than felling. And if Julian has no objection, I will probably crib some of the words that he has said
Yeah.
in his letter and include that as part of our objection.
I think the caveat value is very
There is one thing about
important,
the caveat, because we haven't actually had a caveat valuation put on it yet. It would definitely be worth getting that done, so I can look into that. But obviously the time frame is quite short.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, no one in this area, unfortunately. A lot of people in London. There was somebody who did it in Trowbridge, but he doesn't do it anymore.
You'd have to pay somebody to do it, like a surveyor. Sort
Not
of.
necessarily.
Okay.
The one in Frome, he did it for free for us, just to help save the tree. So I'll look into that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, so someone could propose objection on that one, please. Sheila was first. And second, please. Paul, and all those. Great.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming along. Sure.
Okay, so now we will move on to number 703 on our list. And this is the address is the service yard to the rear of units 1 to 4 station approach room. And the description is for the erection of 6 live work units, the recladding to elevations of units 2 and 4 at station approach and associated works. So you might recall that we discussed this application probably a few months ago now. And at the time, our comments were that we would defer from making any comment because there was an agreement that the plans would be amended. And it's actually the amended plans that we're going to be looking at tonight. And given that we have the agent here, I wonder if you'd be happy to talk us through that. Yeah.
Say a few words. Yeah, do you want me to come and
Yeah,
start?
if that's easy. Yeah, and do you want me to, given time, show any plans on the
Yeah,
screen?
it might be helpful to call up a plan, actually, if
Just,
you don't mind.
just bear with me. Will I?
This isn't it?
Yeah.
Hi.
Pretty high.
Yeah, so, yeah, just for those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Beaver, Planning Sphere, Planning Consultants in Bath. I'm with our client as well, Russell here behind me, and who's the owner of Station Approach. So Jane can call up the plan. Then
Yeah.
you
It'll take me a minute
Yeah,
or
yeah,
so to
take your
get there.
time.
So carry on talking, will I?
Yes, okay. Well, just while Jane's finding the plan, so we listened to what was said last time, and there was in fact a Somerset County Council objection on highways grounds as well. So subsequent to that meeting, we've employed a new transport consultant, and we put together quite a robust transport statement, sort of technical note, which went in with the application, which has gone through the whole transport and movement proposal quite robustly. So I'll wait. Have you found the plan, Jane?
I've got the list. Which plan is it that you
Oh,
want?
just one of the proposed site plans, really, just so proposed landscape plan might have it. One that sort of captures the route of the access and the proposed.
That, I don't know.
Right. Hybrid meetings. Oh, yeah. Start singing. Don't want to break it. I'll let you break it. You see the last bit, Jane? Yeah. Yeah, that's. Maybe zoom in a little bit. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you'll all be, I presume you're all familiar with the site and may have been there as customers or visitors. So the proposal for the 6 live work units is in a rear sort of service yard, which is largely redundant. There is a gym that's at the back of the existing property, but they've just recently served notice, so there's going to be a new user coming into that space in due course. So where we got to with it last time was that there was a highways objection. So what we've done is we've reviewed the Somerset County Council's objection. We've employed a new transport consultant, one that we do a lot of work with in Bath. And so he's looked at the whole proposal from first principles and has produced this transport technical note, which has gone in with the application. So the key changes to the scheme from what was on the table last time is that we've increased the parking provision from 8 to 18 spaces, and that now aligns spot on with the Somerset County Council parking standards, and including for visitor spaces. So there's the spaces within the courtyard itself, and to the,
I found a better plan.
yeah, call it up by all means, yeah. Yeah, that's right. So on the sort of left-hand side, on the west boundary, there's some additional parking which is in the applicant's ownership, which will be designated for this proposal. So there is a total of 18 spaces, plus there's now a full provision of cycle and bin storage. So that all complies with the standards. The other sort of key change in the proposals is a new pedestrian access around the sort of perimeter of the site, which will take the form of what we call a virtual footway. So the footway will be, that's right where Jane's running her cursor, will be demarcated in a different surface, and that will be a dedicated sort of pedestrian access available 24/7. During business opening hours, we've also come up with a proposal to provide direct pedestrian access through the station approach building itself. So there will be a route, direct route through the building, which will have a sort of key fob access for residents. So during the business hours and when there are times when there are commercial deliveries to Froome Reclamation, residents will have an alternative of going through the actual building, and that will be have the appropriate sort of safety considerations of CCTV and key fob access and so forth. So that's so cumulatively that is a quite a material change to the proposals to address the key issues that were raised last time. And the Transport Technical Note has analysed these proposals against the guidance in Manual for Streets, which is the government document that deals with smaller scale residential developments and developments which aren't on trunk roads and things. And the guidance in that document says that where on shared surfaces are likely to be appropriate for roads where there's less than 100 vehicles per hour sort of movements, and where the parking is in controlled and designated sort of areas. So the transport note sort of argues that this scheme as formulated is compliant with that national guidance. So I checked the website today, and Somerset County Council haven't reported their comments back, but we're quite happy to stand behind this much more robust traffic assessment. And I should also add that all the tracking and turning circles and things like that have been done by AutoCAD, and that's all sort of set out quite clearly in the report. So I think last time I believe there was a consensus that the design was quite interesting and members didn't have a major problem with that. And these are quite innovative sort of proposals. People will make a deliberate choice to live in this location. It won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it is becoming quite a vibrant part of Froome. And as I understand, Raj was saying earlier tonight that I think there's 48 people now sort of employed in that station approach, and it's much more vibrant and varied sort of employment and retail offer. So I think the future residents, they may find the trade-off of living somewhere like that, against a sort of a more suburban environment. So it'll be a deliberate choice to live in a house like that, and they're geared up for as live-work units as well. So yeah, I think I'm happy to sort of leave it there, and if it's appropriate for me to answer any questions, either I can or Raj, the applicant, can. So happy for me to leave it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Steve, do you want to? Have you got some things to say? Sorry, Steve. Over to you.
Have my letters been put on?
Not digitally, but which one? Sorry.
The one I sent you?
That one hasn't been uploaded digitally, but there was
No.
one that came in today digitally, which all councillors have seen.
Right. Should I read what I've,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a public meeting,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if you want, yeah.
have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Have you got spare copies, Steve?
Yeah, you probably have it.
I'll let you read it, and then you can put some questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll read this, but it will be without the aid of any images, won't it? Okay, but yeah, we might be able to explain as we go on. In fact, that we can use those images probably.
I can also put it on Street View.
See how we get on. I suppose. Okay, so further to my previous objections, here are more reasons to refuse this application. The car parking area at the front of the site is already proven to be inadequate. A safety barrier and metal fence has been removed, allowing vehicles to use the right of way instead of using the entrance as approved by planning. Now that, can we wind the picture down a bit?
What do you want us to do, sorry?
Well, where the entrance to opposite
Oh,
Jewson's.
that's as far as the plan goes.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you can imagine, well, that's my yard. That's good.
I like this one.
No, it's the other end of the site, I need the front end of the site. There is a picture there somewhere.
One of those?
No, no.
This is something about turning circles and things that you sent through.
No, I'll show you that one. I could do that on the other map that came up just now.
Gate further out. I think.
Yeah, she's just trying to find Street View so that I can.
It's where the entrance to the site by B&M, right at the front there.
Yeah,
Shall we?
Yeah, we know it.
I've got to go in and out of so many different.
Okay.
screens to find it.
Well, if you imagine you were driving to the station, then you turn right into the right of way.
Yeah.
The car park is on the left, B&M's on the right. So from that point, where the big signpost is by the dustbins, there was a barrier that went right up to the buildings and a 6-foot chain link fence, which it got damaged and it was removed. That was a safety barrier from the car park to that right of way. You see, it started there and it went right up through the building. That's it, yeah. So that barrier, you can see the patches just beyond the white line, where all the posts have been removed. That safety barrier did a lot of good there. It separated the cars from this right of way. But now, to the left in the car park, the proper entrance, as in planning was given, is to go in that and out that way into those marked areas. Now the cars go up this main drive and they go in left and they reverse out and come out. Now, where your footpath is proposed, when those barriers were there, they wouldn't reverse over the footpath. With that barrier gone, they go in and out over that footpath which, you know, shouldn't happen really. So that, and I've said here that in any event, that barrier should be reinstated, whether this project goes ahead or not. So going on from there, we find that there are too many pop-up restaurants have appeared in the car park, restricting the parking for the 8 existing companies. This forces vehicles to park and unload on the right of way. And with B&Q about to open Juicen's premises, this will exacerbate the situation. Customers are being asked to park in the rear service area when the front car park is full, exactly where the proposed slope would start. If this continues, this would cause even more problems. When the parking area reaches saturation, we are constantly asking vehicles to move to allow traffic flow to the rear services area. The new revised parking area for visitors will mean the loss of an already established company selling used vehicles. If this project was to start, the total area, plus a bit more, would have to be cordoned off, and with unforeseen complications, construction would probably stretch to more than a year. The health and safety executive would not allow access for anyone, including tenants and general public, to cross onto this building site. Deliveries unloaded by forklift and collections would cease, both for the gym, which I understand there was going, and Dimensions bathrooms, resulting in the possibility of the closure of 2 more established companies. The turning circle, you could go back to that turning circle there. The articulated turning circle. There we are. So that, where are we? The turn circle, or oval, as shown on the plan, suggests maneuvering over land. It encroaches onto our piece of land, actually, for the delivery of materials to city plumbing. This, of course, is not allowed. The image of an articulated vehicle shows just how much room is required to turn. Have we got that picture?
Which one, sorry?
A picture of an articulated lorry? Big blue lorry?
I think Raj has just sent me something.
That's it there, is it? That's one of the pictures.
Yeah, there's 2 there, wasn't
There's another one that's actually turning. Yes, that one there. So you can see that.
I need to keep switching from screen to screen.
Oh, dear.
So, is that the one, Raj, that you've just sent me?
I just sent the one.
Yeah.
We're looking at this one here. This first one. That's actually an articulated vehicle that's turning. It's supposedly within that, but it's not. The vehicles are so long today, they stretch right across the width of the property there.
Sorry, just to explain, I can't share that, Raj, because I have to save it onto my screen.
Yeah, sorry.
First, so, which I can do.
So you got the length of that. I just find my place in that. So when it shows how much room is required for that vehicle to turn. Plus, when they unload that vehicle, safety barriers are placed all around that vehicle so the forklift can work within that area. Well, it's unloading both sides. That stretches right across. Oh, that's not mine.
No, but that's the one that I've just been sent.
Well, that shows nothing.
Right.
Safety, right. A residential caravan was positioned on the proposed site by a lady friend of the landowner without planning permission for several weeks. It's now been removed. The person resided in the caravan wrote an article in the national press expressing her experience of living on an industrial site. Quoting one section of her letter, I quote, "I was awoken every morning at 6 a.m. to the sound of loud music and the clanking of heavy weights. This is self-evident to part of my objections." A new footpath marked on plan D&E, that's the area to the left of City Plumbing's building. That's already, I mean, the footpath is already there, whether it's marked in yellow or people just use it anyway. It shows, actually shows no more safety than there is now. Large vehicles can only just squeeze through that existing gap by the City Plumbing building, which is not shown on that one. So the gap is to the right of your, oh no, come down with it. Where's your arrow? Come on, down a bit there. There, that narrow bit there, where that building is. Imagine you're driving an Arctic. There, see? That's very narrow. An Arctic just squeezes through there. Now, to show there's no animosity on our part, I have no objections to a more agreeable plan. I've sketched out a scheme that would still allow 6 units of the same size as proposed within the same area, including appropriate parking, and this could be done without the need for residential occupation. These could be let by the landowner instead of instantly being sold to create 6 freeholds, resulting in no landlord control. I can share this plan with the architect if he's interested. This plan would resolve all problems and resume the status quo. There's no mention of the security gates, how that would operate. There's no mention of pedestrian lighting. To sum up, it's not a place for residential occupation in the center of a busy and already cramped industrial site. You'll get all these, but you haven't uploaded them, that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got half. I did print off.
You must have all
Yeah.
these, yeah. So I'll just read this. Sorry?
I think you sent another letter, didn't you, this afternoon?
Yeah, this is from one of my other property companies.
Right.
If you'd like to pass this around, you can probably see that, unless you've uploaded this one as well. I'll read this out. The new proposed right-of-way and footpath, as shown on the plan, goes right through the centre of an existing loading bay, which is in continual use by City Plumbing. It's cross-hatched on the plan, which is the length of an Arctic vehicle and the amount of room it takes to put safety barriers around for the forklift. This would severely disrupt vehicle passage to the proposed site, causing the builder of vehicles waiting to maneuver. The landowner's intention is to build and sell the residential dwellings, which will create 6 new freeholds with no landlord control over how many residents, including children and pets, would be in occupation, the type of business run in from the ground floor, and the number of vehicles. This is a disaster waiting to happen. And then, sorry, from another company I own. I'll just read what they've said here. And I hope I don't reiterate too much. The loading bay at the rear of Dimensions bathrooms would no longer be able to operate loading, unloading with a forklift, and large vehicles not be able to reach this area. This means Dimensions bathrooms will have to share the loading bay with City Plumbing and transfer loads via forklift up and down the proposed slope, not recommended in view of this proposed footpath. With the proposed visitors parking area, will the proposed visitors parking area be divided up into 6 sections and joined to each freehold dwelling? Visitors will find themselves crossing over the upper service area, dodging vehicles and forklifts, again, not recommended. If this land was within a residential area, it would be unlikely to receive planning permission for more than 3 dwellings with gardens and parking. So why would permission be granted for 6, not in a residential area? And finally, people already work from home in garages, sheds, or spare rooms. So why the need for specially built properties? This is no more than a ploy to exploit a section of land for pure greed.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think Raj
I think
would
Raj would like to say something, Steve, so
Sure he would.
we'll move on.
I'll sort that out, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
You should have a copy of that now.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
You've got that anyway. So.
I've got
All right.
copies.
Anyway,
one of those.
Yeah, that was mine.
One with the numbers written on it for me. One with the print. Okay, thanks.
Evening, Raj.
Evening. Thank you.
Would you like me to keep any of these plans on screen? or-
The picture that I just sent you, I think, is quite interesting.
It's nice having people in touch. Real gremlins tonight.
There we go.
I can't. Unfortunately, Raj, your email is showing on there, so do you want me to stop that?
That's fine.
Okay, yeah.
Start.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me this time to talk. There's been plenty of arguing about whether or not lorries have the space to turn in the back. And I thought I'd take that picture, which was about 3 weeks ago, where despite a couple of Steve's customers being parked end on, there was plenty of room to turn the lorry. Couldn't find the video that I took of the lorry driver doing it. He brilliantly managed to do a U-turn in an Arctic.
Sorry, I can't hear it.
Which I didn't know was possible. Just to clarify some of Chris's comments, there's been 48 new jobs created at the station, in addition to the ones that were already there. The construction of these houses will allow on the 27.5 square meters of net usable space on the ground floor. If we assume 5 square meters per occupant, that allows another 30 jobs potentially in the 6 live work units. The gym, unfortunately, is closing, and that space is going to become a yoga school, a brewery, and flexible office space as well. I'm hoping that I can densify the occupation space for the gym as well, which should create another 35-ish jobs if we use the same job density as the previous unit 1. Delivery of over 100 new jobs on that funny little space I'm quite proud of. I think it's a good thing for Frome. These are all high value jobs as well. Some of them do pay by the hour, but most of them pay by the contract. And the amount of money that people can get paid in those kind of jobs is significantly more than the previous industrial-based jobs that used to be there when it was a carpet factory. It's a great shame that we lost the malt building that used to be when it was built. I'm very happy to hear that Steve is generally supportive of development of the area. I'd be very happy to create a footpath between those 2 warehouses there to the development at the back to allow people to walk all the way through from the old Cooper and Butler and Tanner factory through to the town centre. And It's not land that's used. It's only not used at all at the moment. But I think that making the town better is a thing that I'd like to do. Regarding the design of the houses, I'm aware that they're a bit unusual. That was on purpose. Frome, I feel like I've only just arrived from Frome, but I've been here 15 years. Frome's a funny town because people actually make things here. Yet there's gifted artisans here. Charlie Oldham is as good as any woodcarver that's ever lived. There's a marquetry cutter that works in Truddock's Hill in proper Victorian squalor. People need to have high quality places to do the jobs that they want to do. The problem with being an artisan, and they don't get paid very much, is that if you have to rent your studio and you have to rent your house, there's two things that you're renting. If you can work from home, yes, there's the sustainability argument, which is terribly fashionable these days, but brutally, you don't have to rent two places. It's much cheaper. It's new accommodation. There'll be code 5. If I put those 670 watt PV panels on the back, I'll be able to power the entire development from their own generative capacity. The price of battery power has fallen through the floor. I can easily install those as well. The idea is to create high quality dwellings for people that want them. Now, they're not going to have gardens, but the people that will live there will obviously understand exactly what they are. They'll see them before they buy them. And they won't want a garden if they're going to buy that because there aren't any gardens there. It's completely up to you as to what you do. My goal is to make the place better, and I hope that that comes across in the plans. Are there any questions?
I've got a couple of points,
Yeah.
if I may. As you can see from this toned body, I was a regular user of that gym. I was in there this morning to be told that they were closing down. It seemed all a bit sudden.
Very sad.
Very sudden. And so they didn't mention anything about a yoga school or a gym or a brewery going in there, but they did mention about the access coming through the building. So that would be presumably through the brewery and the yoga school.
Through the fire escape, yeah.
Through a fire escape. Well, you have to work out the code on that. I don't know how that works. I'm concerned about the virtual footpath on the pinch point at City Plumbing, just at the edge of the B&M thing, because that's really, really narrow there.
That's 6 meters wide.
Sorry?
That's 6 meters wide.
But you can see from that photograph, it's very, as soon as you have a vehicle coming around a blind corner there, that's going to be a bit difficult.
I don't know if it was explained. We're very happy to put a mirror there so that you can see whether there's a
Okay, that's fine.
The other point is that outside business hours, there's the ability to walk through the building.
Yeah.
So pedestrians do have an alternative.
That's right, yeah. And the other concern I have is that big wall that goes onto Steve's property, which there are a couple of cracks in it already, I think, but there have been in the past.
It is deteriorating. So.
What happens when that collapses onto your houses?
I'd very happily rebuild the wall.
You would replace that wall?
I would very happily replace the wall. It's Steve's wall. He's going to have to approve it. If he doesn't want to do that, I'll very happily strengthen it.
Insurance would cover it.
I don't know how you get to fix it from
No.
from behind either way.
There's a service entrance behind the house so that that wall can be maintained.
So how much gap is there between the houses and the wall?
3 foot, isn't it?
300 mil, I think.
No, I think it's 3 foot. There's enough that you can walk there.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Anyway, so and I
You can agree it now if you like. Shall I pay to rebuild it?
talk about it. That's not for this meeting.
Yeah, not for this
The
meeting. Yeah,
and the
it's
other
good that you're talking, but it's
yeah,
not
no,
for this
it's good that you
meeting,
can talk, and
Yeah.
happy to facilitate that. The other thing is, I mean, this lady who was living in the caravan was complaining about the clunking of the gym. I mean, I think your building's open 6 days a week, isn't it? 6 mornings a week, certainly.
Sure.
So people who overlook that will be facing that as well. So that's something they buy into when they buy the place, I take
I
it.
would just add on that point, we did do a noise survey, and that's gone in with the application, and the environmental health officer in Mendip has signed it off. So we've got empirical measured noise survey.
Okay, so they find that acceptable.
They did.
Okay, and the dust and whatever that's created by Steve's
Yeah, and I
industry
think
there.
it's a sort of choice, isn't it? People know that they'll be living in an environment like that.
Yeah, because we often hear, you know, people buy houses then complain about things
Yes,
later on.
yeah,
But
that's a valid point. And
the bloke who buys the old
rectory.
rectory and complains about the church bells.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, we're anxious to avoid that sort of thing, but thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting what you can do about the wall.
I mean, there's a party wall process which is outside of planning, where if the planning permission is granted, it's under other legislation, so it's a property matter. It's not necessarily a planning matter.
What sort of businesses do you see going into 27 square meters? What's that? That's about the size of this table, isn't it?
Well, it'd be a business like mine. We could easily
office.
work out of that. Yeah,
It would be an office.
absolutely.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an artisan making.
Well, you could do.
It wouldn't be Charlie with his wood workshop.
Well, the idea is it's flexible. So that if you want to use the front bit as a shop and the back bit as a place to make things, you can do that. But if you want to have it as like rather nice design where it's all desks, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Tom McEwen would be able to make his jewellery in the back and sell it out the front. I personally quite like to see it as shops that you can make things in. It makes it more interesting.
So you come out of the brewery / yoga school into a little arcade of things facing you there.
People making things and selling them out the front.
Okay.
That's what I'd quite like, but I don't have any ability to influence that whatsoever.
But you intend selling the freeholds,
Yes.
not retaining the lease and
No.
then having some control over it.
No, sell the freeholds.
Okay. Thank you.
Raj, you said you were going to create up to 100 jobs. 100 people got to drive a car. Where are they going to park?
There's 47 people working in the front, nearly all of them cycle.
Well, we know there is. We get locked in.
Guys, can we move
Right,
on
yeah.
to the questions that we got coming from
Sure.
councillors? And Paul, I think you're next.
Yeah, I've got quite a few, I think. But actually, just on that 6 metre kind of narrowing point, is that wide enough to actually separate the footpath from the vehicle access? So you know, if you had a bollards there or something like that to make it safe, or is it? Because you talked about a virtual footway. Why does it?
Yeah, I mean,
Does it have to be a
the
virtual?
minimum size for a sort of 2 carriageway road is 4.1 metres. So that could be an adopted road. So 6 is enough. I mean, yes, of course, vehicles have to move slowly. And I think one other thing about the virtual footway is it sort of signals to drivers, you know, because it's got a different coloured surface, to exercise more caution as well.
Yeah, that's
That's
6
the Land
meters
Rover.
At the pinch point.
there.
So you've got a van park there, you've got somebody walking along your virtual footpath, and you've got a truck coming down here. That is a. It's dangerous. I look at it,
narrow.
yeah.
Yes, it doesn't.
Mhm.
Look from the other
When
side.
the Arctic comes through, it's at an extreme angle to get through there. And so it almost touches the building and the post opposite. You wouldn't have room for someone to walk that.
Well,
If you put a bollard there, they'd just get knocked over every time.
it's 6 meters.
You've
Between
also
the
got to
fence
think about
and
the
building.
frequency of those vehicle movements as well.
Doesn't really look like 6 metres.
It's not 6 meters.
Yeah, I measured it.
We'd hope that highways would comment.
From the
on that
fence
one
to the
way or
building,
Yeah.
it's 6 meters.
Fence.
Is it highways that's privately owned? Would they comment?
Oh, to the building as well, because there's a gate in between and a
The gate will be coming off. And the gate post will be coming out as well.
That's our security guard for everybody. Then, isn't it?
What else? I like the footpath through to the Butler and Tanner site. That sounds like that would be definitely a win.
Is that across my land right?
Yeah, if you want to do it, it's there.
No, thanks.
That might be a problem.
Compulsory purchase.
I'd see go it if I was you.
Wouldn't have enough money.
The ground.
Fun meetings in person.
I seem to remember they appeared like they could be very dark in there. Is there light from the rear of those or not?
Yes, there's windows in the rear and a lot of the front of them are glass, so they're going to be very light.
Yeah, I mean, but the front of those is below a kind of balcony above, isn't it? So it's heavily shaded, the front part.
That was certainly something we mentioned last time.
Yeah, so I mean, if they can gain light from the rear as well, and it sounds like you've got an access channel through between, which presumably would allow potential light to come in through there somehow, if there's windows.
There are windows in the back, yeah. And the window in the top is double height, it's very big.
Oh, below the balcony.
The window above the balcony, that would be 4 meters, 4.5 meters high.
Right, but I'm just thinking about the workspace below.
So the workspace is completely glass fronted. And yet, while there may be a balcony over the top, they will have a full glass wall. I can't see them being dark.
Just a minor thing that you've added the cycle storage. But it appeared to me that the cycle storage and bins were in the same place. And is there actually adequate space for both of them at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, the highway consultants just looked at the capacity and they are to the standards of Somerset County Council and space-wise. So, yeah. And bin storage, yeah, and recycling.
Did you know that we've got EV charging going in at the front as well?
Yeah, that was something that we picked up, wasn't actually in your transport station.
That's part of a different proposal. So there's public EV charging going where the on the
is there EV charging at the back?
We've got planning permission for, and then there will be EV charging points, one for each unit
As well.
as well. Yeah, so there'll be a connection sort of point there, 7 kilowatt.
So there's 6 in the front, 4 of which will be 80 kilowatts. So you can get Porsche charged up to 75% in 10 minutes. And then there'll be 2 7 kilowatt ones, which will be slightly slower.
Oh, no, right?
I wouldn't. I haven't got one
We've got a
either.
charger here.
There's obviously a lot of electric bikes get used there, so we would want electric bike charging there too. And I think that there's probably enough business coming from there now that it's worth having or looking into autonomous food delivery. But they're cool, these little like robot things, you program them and they just go off. So we wouldn't mind doing that too at some point.
I think, speaking personally, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going on there. I absolutely agree with you, and I like what you're trying to do there. My gut feeling is it's not the right place though, and it would be fantastic. And I realise that you wouldn't make so much money. You probably would make very little money if this was just a purely work unit without the live part of it. Because it's the live part of it that seems to be causing the problems, as far as I can tell.
You can't let them a 27 square meter work units; they're too small.
But you could have double height
Have tall ones.
workspaces. Yeah. You could have two floors of workspaces potentially, or something like that.
Natural space ends up being the thing that people want if they're going to work with other people. If they're going to work on their own, they don't mind having enclosed spaces.
I'm sure that there are people looking for small workspaces.
There really are. There's loads and loads of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you potentially probably could let the space the size of a double garage to somebody who wants to make jewellery, as you say, or
There is some benefit for Resi for security as well, and surveillance, added vitality.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of blended mix.
Fair enough. There's a plus to it, but there's a lot of negatives. This is where the challenge.
It's a judgment call. I think the Highway Authority their comments will be, quite key when they come back, really. So, as I say, we've gone through. That seems to be the main issues, the safety and highway issue. And I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at it. This is a pretty robust report. So, we're pretty confident that it will be judged to be acceptable. But
That's your own transport statement.
this is a transport consultant that we employed to review the proposals and to formulate this proposal.
There's quite a bit of opposition, isn't there, to the points that Steve made. I noticed, Civic Society have got an objection about the path, safety aspect. It does seem to me that that's the first obstacle you have to overcome, because I know from other applications, if the transport bit isn't right, you've got no chance. If they deem it to be unsafe, you're going to have problems. So I think that is something to work on. I'm a bit like, when I first saw this, I thought, this is all wrong. But by the way, I think you're doing a great job down there. I think it's fantastic. It's really good to see it lively, and hopefully the other businesses are getting some benefit from it as well, hopefully. I appreciate there are some naughty car parkers, because I've been down there on the bike actually, or walking as well. It's a bit tricky. So some of those photographs, it does happen, but I think you've got to work with your neighbours and kind of come up with something that they're happy with as well, because I don't think it's right to put other people's noses out of joint really just to do this. It's that live work space, which I understand, because my uncle years ago used to do something very similar. He was a car mechanic, and him and a few mates, they had a unit up in Leeds, and they used to take their beds down there because they were so keen, you know, they just get there all night and get up and do some more work. But I guess it's that kind of vibe that you're after. But if you just look at it as live work, it seems to me, I'm not sold on it 100%. There's something, it doesn't feel right to me. If you know,
Paintworks in Bristol.
yeah. I do think you've got more work to do on it. I'm totally supportive of the idea, and if Steve's got an alternative, I'd quite like to see that. I don't know what, you know, that would be interesting. I did wonder, you know, you've got the car. I'm going off beam, but where you put all the cars parking, is there space to put any units there and put parking down here? Is that something you thought of?
Parking both. Yeah.
The parking on the left backs onto people's houses. So I don't want to encroach on their houses if I don't have to.
Anyway, I think the transport is the issue. I think the turning circle is a big one. And I don't know about a live work thing, but
Turning circle definitely works.
Oh, I'm sure it would work. I'm sure you get people to go in there. I'm not sure
Works now.
what the problems that it would create. I'm not 100% convinced that it wouldn't create a lot of parking problems, traffic problems for people.
Future aggro, I mean, it's just that sort of concern that people would get anxious about, you know, being close up to lots of, you know, industrial traffic turning. And I mean, as you say, people are going to buy it being aware that this is an industrial site as well.
Looking through the building it's already 3/4 there.
Yeah.
That's intended to be a way that you can go. I mean, creating a footfall in the back of the unit is as important as creating an ability to access the town centre from the houses at the back too. That needs to be a good passageway through.
And the access through the building that you've got there, is that 24/7, or is it just when the other places like the bakery?
So the problem with making it 24/7 is that in the event that there's businesses in the back that need to have security, then I don't know how that would work. I don't have a problem with making it 24/7, but need to make sure that works for the businesses in the back.
And so at the moment you're saying it's open when the business is
Business
there.
hours at the moment, but
Jane, did you have a question? Drainage, flooding and all that. It's quite a low site, isn't it, that bit, compared to the rest of the land? I mean, is it well drained or is it?
The drains block up because Steve has a lot of silt that washes out of his site. In the middle of the plot, there's a drain, and that goes out to a drain that goes down the east boundary.
yeah, there's a technical drainage report with the submission which deals with foul and surface water disposal.
The whole thing used to be, the whole building used to be a malt house. It's got Victorian drains all the way through it. They're beautiful. It was in the war, yeah. But before that, it was a 4-storey malt house. It was huge.
Yeah, it was enormous, yeah.
The malt house wasn't on your side. Malt house was on the other side. The existing wall you can see is the last bit that's been made. Underneath there, I think you'll find underneath.
I guess
I was saying, if you were to start digging, there's an awful lot of rubble underneath them where it was pushed over and partly leveled out. That's just going up the lower area.
I guess for me, what I'm saying is the transport thing needs sorting out and highways need to give that the okay. And the footpath, you know, it feels like you might be a little bit exposed at times to heavy vehicles.
There's 3 Arctics a week that go to City Plumbing.
I've never met one actually, I must say, when I've been around there, but yeah, I think it obviously still.
How many dimensions round the back?
I support the idea of it in principle.
16 tons.
Yes.
We're there every day. We see Arctics. I've got a picture there.
You tell me that you don't use Arctics.
I don't use Arctics. I'm saying You just said
Right, guys. Can we?
Yeah, we need to get on.
Yeah, can we get back on topic?
The idea, but for me, I don't think this is it yet.
All right.
That's how I feel about it.
Can I just ask
Over
a
to Jane.
question whilst we're on the subject of transport? Looking at the swept path plan, showing the lorries here, is this here indicating the turning circle of those lorries?
Yeah, it's actually much bigger than it needs to be. They can turn in a much tighter circle than that.
So could we include on the swept path the track of those HGVs?
That's it.
Turning around there.
That is it.
Yeah, but could you actually show the vehicles on the track? Just
You probably could superimpose it on, as in sort of each
so you,
movement, every meter or something,
yeah. So you
moving
show,
around,
show the
cranking around.
vehicles here. I mean, I hold my hand up. I've never driven an HGV, but
Yeah.
that to me looks like an
Raj has got a very good
Does,
video of one actually.
Yeah,
that,
I would like to see it on the plan though, as
Yeah,
well as
yeah,
on
yeah.
the video.
Well, if you want us to send you a supplementary, you can ask the highway consultant to see if they can print it out to show, demonstrate it.
I think if you could,
But we
that would
can
be
also send you a link of the video that Raj has got,
I'll
which shows.
happily look at the video as well, but I would
Thank you.
like, I'd just like
Yeah.
to see it shown going around it, because it does look a very tight turning circle for an HGV to get around, but I'm not an expert, so.
It's been done in what's called auto track, which is a sort of industry standard sort of tracking software. So,
And given the concerns about the narrowness of the road and the pedestrian footpath, I know you said it's going to be done in a different colour, the surface, to indicate that it is pedestrian footpath, but thinking about the safety of those pedestrians, potentially somebody going around there may not realise there's a pedestrian coming because, it is a bit of a blind bend. Is there any possibility to put any protection in for pedestrians, sort of a raised curb or bollards?
We can do that. We can put a raised, if we do a bump that's that high, so you'd feel it going over it in a lorry, that's easy, is it? There's plenty of space though too.
yeah, lots of those details could come through in conditions and things like that. So, and consultation with Steve and what have you.
It could come through in condition, but I think if there was a willingness to show them on the plan, then that might make us more comfortable. But I do, from what I've been hearing from councillors, I do think the concern is very much about that pedestrian
certainly
access
for the
and the vehicles.
pedestrians, for the residents, they've got a viable alternative going straight through the building during the business hours,
During business hours, but
which is when the HGVs are
so will the gate not be locked anymore then?
The gate won't be there.
Okay. So a vehicle could go through there at any given time.
Yes.
So whilst there is pedestrian access during business hours, there's nothing to say that a random vehicle might not go around there when there's a pedestrian having to go around that way.
That's true. I mean, there are speed bumps there, so people going quickly.
I think the other thing must be surely to have better lighting around there. I mean,
yeah, again, that would all be conditions. I think it's the surfacing, the lighting, the signage.
I have spec the lights. Do you want to have a look?
No.
So there's little stud things that have like a slot cut in them, and the light goes across the road.
Right. I mean, I hope you're hearing that we think it's like Paul said, lots of things that are really interesting, and that area certainly has improved enormously over the last couple of years in quite trying circumstances. So it's pretty impressive, but it is challenging to sort of try and see that to actually have residential places around the back of what is basically a sort of a lively industrial area.
I've had specific inquiry via Hunter French for accommodation there.
Right.
People who like living in
busy areas,
industrial areas,
I mean, it's
like living there.
certainly a lively area, isn't it? It's changed enormously. Well,
Any other questions from anybody? Okay.
No, I was just going to sort of summarise really. I think.
Can I have my tab?
Yeah. I forgot about you.
If I may.
The chair.
I think you two are really close to sort of agreeing on what could be done here, which I'm sure if you sat down, you probably could come up with an agreement. I love what's going on at the station. I'm sort of heavily involved on the railway side. So I think it's, yeah, I think it's really close to something that could really, really work. I'm probably very aligned with what Rich said. I think I think the access, that transport is the thing that I would, yeah, that's going to sway it either way for me, quite frankly. If that comes back and they say it's fine, and what you're saying about the path from the old Caxton, from the Caxton Road, from Blackburn Tanner, if you could make that sweep safer for pedestrians when they walk round, then yeah, I don't really have too much of an issue with it. People, you know, if people want to live and work there, it's an industrial site. They know what they're getting into. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that I think there is a call for that in Frome. That's my view on it. Obviously, it's just my view, but it's close. It's really, really
These
close.
style of houses, I was the underbidder at Saxon Vale, and these style of houses is what I wanted to build at Saxon Vale.
Saxon's would have been a great place.
Yeah, much better. No, it would. You want to put an application for that as well, do you?
Well, no, there's enough applications there.
Helen, sorry.
I've just allowed you to talk, Helen, so you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm just listening in, and I'm only just hearing you by the way. Thank you. I'm really impressed at the way you're all engaging with this and asking all the right questions, and it's a lesson for me listening to you. I am speaking not as somebody that's interested in planning right now, but someone that lives in Frome and also happens to be a landlord. I have a flat in London, and it's one of 8. It's one of 16 actually. We've got 8 in the stairwell, and when we need to do works to everything together, it helps that we are all joint freeholders. And my concern is that each one of these 6 properties is going to be sold off with individual freeholds, and it'll be a problem if you suddenly want to manage something that's going to affect them all. And I'm wondering, is there going to be some kind of management plan set up so that you can deal with things that might come up? Like, it could be anything. It could be about drains or waste, or you know, painting the road or the car parking spaces, all these sorts of things. You know, 3 or 4 years down the line, if this goes through, how would those sort of issues be managed?
I have to say, my experience where there's some communal solution that is needed, it's pretty much always involved toilets. The station approach is going to stay in one ownership, stays in my ownership. I think a professional management company to manage the affairs of the residential units is going to be important. If I can make that the same management company that manages the station as well, then that's good for me too. So whilst there would be freehold, I think contribution to management is important and probably would be put in place.
I think undoubtedly it would, because where you have a situation where there's just a private drive and the communal parking and drainage, it is standard practice to set up a private management company. The residents will become shareholders. Potentially they could become shareholders of that company if it's not done through your existing one, and they pay an annual service charge. Okay, thank you. That's that. Thanks very much.
Right, if there's no other questions, I think we probably need to wrap this one up, don't we? If we can.
Well, I mean, I was going to say something similar to you, and I suppose I think we're not there yet, and it's a case of whether we, as a committee, actually want to submit an objection at this stage, or, you know, will there be do we want to see how things, if there's likely to be any amendments, or if there can be any agreement between Raj and Steve. I'm not quite sure how you want to take this forward, really.
I'll start because I finished off. I don't actually want to object to this point. I want to see what highways say, and I would actually, if Raj and Steve or Chris or whatever can get together and sort of come up with something that works for them, and then I think we should try that. I mean, that would be that's my take on it. Ladies and gents.
I mean, I don't know whether we need to object to it as it stands, though. I mean,
That's my question.
we
really,
are
yeah.
responding to
Yeah.
the application as it is at the moment, and at the moment we're not quite satisfied, and therefore we're objecting. Aren't we? But we are optimistic that you can find solutions to the things that we're worried about.
I'm not optimistic that I can find a solution with Steve, but I do think I'll be able to find a solution to the traffic issue.
I mean, I guess it's down. Would you?
So
would
we say
you advise?
in principle, we don't object, but.
Would you like me to show you a raised curb plan and how a different coloured tarmac for a footpath would look?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when the highways comments come back, if they do raise any more issues, then we'll
Add in extra drawings and
add
amend.
detail in anyway, so or rebuttal.
I wonder if that. I mean, just going back to one of the things that Steve said, I wonder if that raised curb could continue right the way through to the station approach road. You know, by, Steve said where the vehicles are
Could do
reversed
that.
out.
Yeah. To demarcate it a bit more clearly. Yeah.
So we could say that we would like to defer a comment until we have seen the response from Somerset County Council Highways and further amended plans.
Amended or additional. Yeah.
Whichever word. I don't care.
I think we would urge you to try and talk, even if it's
Yeah.
through a mediator.
Even
Through a
if
third
even if it's
party.
through us. Yeah,
Because
I'm happy to.
I'm concerned
Help.
about that wall.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the flooding. I'm concerned about
Yeah, the wall.
300 mil access space. I don't see anybody to get into 300 mil and rebuild a wall.
No, I think it's 3 foot, isn't it? I mean, it is 3. It was done so that you can
We'll
walk
check
behind there.
distance as well.
I wouldn't be able to walk behind it. Steve wouldn't be able to walk behind it. And I, with respect,
If I can
And,
walk behind it,
yeah.
they're going to be all right.
300 mil.
you could maybe shimmy through it by lifting bricks to that 20 feet height or whatever. It would be very difficult. So, I'm being a worst case scenario person here, but I hate to see that wall fall either way.
It won't fall over. Like I say, either I can rebuild it or I can reinforce it.
The
Rebuilding a wall is not expensive.
It's not expensive whilst it's open like it is at the moment. When you've got the building, when you've got your houses there, I think it would be a lot more expensive, a lot more difficult. Yeah, there's all sorts of issues there. So that's why you need to talk now rather than before that's done, I think, in my opinion.
I think that would have to get settled by a party wall board.
Yeah, whatever the legal arrangements you want to do, that's great. And if you need a mediator, then do that. But let's talk. These things are always going to be sorted out by people talking to each other.
It's been great tonight.
Yeah.
I think we need to.
We need to wrap this up. And,
Thank you very much for your time.
thanks everybody for
Thanks,
coming.
everybody.
Thank you.
We don't-
talk
well,
about the
no,
retreat
We
now.
don't need to.
Oh,
because
yes,
we're
do you want to
prepared
say
for
where it's on
that.
the retreat as well?
Yeah, I want to ask you one question. It'll be
Yeah.
5 minutes, all right? So
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Not at all.
All right, sorry. He's got more.
I'll say all
You're the go-to agent.
Yeah, sorry, take it.
You're the go-to agent,
You're
obviously.
the go-to agent. Yeah. Do you live in Froome, Chris?
Bye, Steve.
Do you live in Froome? You should live in Froome.
No, I live in Trowbridge.
Okay.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the letters and I've seen
The sketches that you were saying for your different.
your solution.
Oh, the schedules I've drawn. Yeah. Well, I can, yeah. Do you want to talk about those?
I'm talking, sorry, we're talking
Not
about.
now, I mean, do you want to come and see me and look at the schedules I've made?
Yeah, we'll send them over. Yeah.
Like I said in there, relieve all these problems.
Yeah.
You can still have 6 units, but under landlord control.
Didn't realise you were an architect as well, Steve.
All right, thanks, guys.
Look
Can
at
we-
everything.
We had a 2.5 meeting last night, 2.5 hour meeting last night. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so can you quickly, for the benefit of those watching later in the morning or whatever, just introduce the next one?
Yes.
I don't know what the number is. The
So-
retreat, isn't it? Yeah.
So this is item number 699 on our list. It's land adjacent to the retreat. The description is for the application to remove conditions 16 and 17, which is essentially the removal of permitted development rights for extensions extensions to the roof and any outbuildings or boundary treatments. So as you'll all be aware, the planning has been granted for the dwellings down at the retreat. And as I've just said, there are two conditions that remove their right to build anything without prior approval. So normally on a residential property, you would have limited development rights where you can build extensions or make alterations to roofs, boundary treatments, etc., up to a certain size without the need for planning permission. In this instance, they have been removed. The accompanying documentation that was submitted with the application does refer to what the planning inspector said when it went to appeal, which was he didn't think it was right or it wasn't necessary for those conditions to be applied. However, Mendip have applied them, and from what I understand, that was done in consultation with the Mendip councillors and the senior officers at Mendip. So essentially, we're here to discuss whether or not we feel that we want to object to those conditions being removed or not. The reason that I believe that they were put on was to protect the river footpath. However, you know, as we know, there are negotiations going on where that, which is why you're not.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at you because you're there. So that they may not be necessary for that reason, but you know, there's the wider reason of the landscape impacts on the river corridor in that area. You know, I do think it has a very valuable landscape there, irrespective of whether or not it would have any impacts on the river footpath itself. But anyway, that's what we're here to discuss, and I believe Steve wanted to ask.
Just a why, really.
Yes.
That's the main question. Is why now? And
yeah, so just
yeah.
I think James sort of set out the situation, but just to be absolutely clear, there was an initial application which was put in for the mixed use development that had the 4 houses and the work units. Mendip failed to make a decision on that, so we went to appeal, and it was approved at appeal, and the planning inspector weighed up whether to put those conditions on removing PD rights, permitted development rights, and reasoned in the decision letter, the planning appeal decision letter, that it was not necessary. Mendip, we then put a very similar second application in, which is ostensibly the same as the one that was approved at appeal, but there were some minor differences to allow this alternative footpath route, which you're all talking about. So that was the rationale for that second application. But Mendip, although they may have consulted the ward councillors, they didn't consult us, and they just imposed those PD conditions without any prior discussion with ourselves. So our client understandably said, well, we've got inconsistent decision making here. We've got a planning inspector that deemed that those conditions weren't necessary, and Mendip have taken it upon themselves to impose those conditions without any prior consultation with us. So as a sort of point of principle, but also wanting to have, because we've got 2 planning permissions for our site now, so I'm wanting to have them on a equitable sort of basis, really. So the other point I would say is that a planning inspector's decision letter has special status in planning as well, so it's a material consideration in itself. So Mendip were quite wrong to make an inconsistent decision and not consistent with the plan. So they essentially, if this was refused, we took it to appeal, we would have a very valid cost claim against Mendip for inconsistent decision making, especially when a planning inspector's put in writing that he's actually considered the merit of taking those PD rights away and has dismissed it. So that's really, it's a point of principle, really. And so the applicants, they don't want to implement the first scheme. They want to implement the second one to allow the footpath. They want it on an equitable sort of basis, So as I say, it's more of a point of principle, and really these removal of PD rights, in my opinion, should only be sparingly used. You're interfering with people's property rights as well further down the line. So really that's it. So we were instructed to put the application in to try and make both the permissions sort of approved on an equitable basis.
Yeah.
And the applicant, as you know, they want to conclude a deal to transfer the surplus land to the town council,
yeah.
and this compromise footpath, which was arose out of many hours of discussion
Sure.
to sort of come to the fore. So, and it's a big site. I mean, there are 4 houses in quite a large sort of area there. There'll be landscaping schemes and things like that. So, I personally don't have any concerns about.
That is the second plans that they're going to go ahead.
They want, that's the ones they want to implement. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they have got this fallback position of the first appeal that went through, but that wouldn't allow the northern, or the, the alternative compromise
path,
footpath.
yeah.
So it's the second planning permission that they want to implement, but they want to take off the PD rights. So it's on the same basis as the first one that the planning inspector determined. So yes, as I say, it's a point of principle really. And so that's why the application's before Mendip and yourselves.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions, Chris? Or we let him go?
No. I was just wondering whether Helen had any question. I don't know.
I was going to say, I mean, I'd be, it's not really a question, but I'd be interested to know why the planning officer, or presumably it was delegated to planning officer that imposed these.
I believe he said that he was instructed to do it by a councillor. So so don't quote me on that, but I know I'm now actually recording forevermore on YouTube. But I understand that was the basis on which it was allowed to be delegated, was subject to those conditions. But he was quite wrong not to consult us as the applicant's agent before going forward on that basis.
I mean, technically, I accept what you're saying, but it just seems like that's a little bit in the jigsaw puzzle we've been missing.
Yes, yeah,
exactly.
That's difficult for us to make a decision without that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to defer it right to the planning officer and ask him for an explanation, I'd be interested to read it. So
that was what you suggested. That was one of the things we discussed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it is inconsistent. Decisions are meant to be made on a consistent basis.
Yeah, absolutely, they are, and everything that you said is 100, is totally correct. But I mean, this is only my view. I can see why they would want to protect that landscape, because removing the permitted development rights doesn't mean you can't build anything. It just means whatever you build, you need planning permission for. And I can see that the potential inconvenience of that for any future occupier. But I do think that landscape needs protecting, but then I'm not a planning inspector, so
I mean, it does have this sort of 8-metre buffer, against the river, and then there's all the land that they want to dispose. So there's quite a nice sort of setting sort of around it, and then obviously the gardens will be domesticised, and if someone wants to put a garden shed in there, is it really within that setting? So yeah, it's a judgment call, but I think that
sheds fall within that. Right.
In those rights, well, I mean, they're rights relating to sort of outbuildings and extensions and things like that as well. So, they may not be used.
Is there a buffer beyond the garden?
Yes. Yeah. There's an 8-metre buffer.
So even with permitted development rights, they couldn't put a shed in that?
No, absolutely. Yeah, and there's a floodplain there as well. So, yeah.
Can we find out from Jane? Can we find out? Can you write to the case officer?
I was reading the question on screen. Sorry.
Oh, right. It's just, I mean, this whole site has been a saga, isn't it?
It has been a saga.
It's just like,
it's kept us busy.
I'm sure it has. Yeah.
I can ask the question, but I believe Chris has just told us the answer.
Yeah. No, I'm interested in why they put it in the first place. See, Helen wants to speak as well. Yeah. Helen, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. I've not been completely on top of this, I'll be honest. I'm one of the ward councillors at district level, and I believe my colleague Shane Collins, the other councillor, has been the main person liaising on this, and he knows more about it. I was not consulted about the conditions. I don't know if he was, and I don't know if he asked for them to be put on. The officer concerned had a sort of personal family issue to deal with, and that may be why there's been some inconsistencies. I apologise for that. However, I have been approached by a couple of people that have expressed a reservation about having these conditions removed, partly because of, similar to what Jane said about the character of the valley. I suppose it's like a little river valley, isn't it? That it will be affected if sort of big fences go up that are then painted in different colours, and then you've got sheds and whatever. But also because I think you're extending into flood zone 2 at the back of those gardens, and there is a possibility that if we do have flooding in the future, that some of those things could then be damaged. I mean, I expect it's just that's the risk that the people living there that put up those fences and sheds take, but that it would not just be an issue about the character of the what it looks like, but also possibly dangerous. That's what's been suggested to me. I haven't looked into it, and I haven't looked at the flood maps recently, so I can't say whether or not I agree with those people, but that's what I've been told.
I have looked at the flood maps. It's flood zone 3. There.
By the river it is, and where the houses are in the flood zone 1. Yeah.
I think what Chris is saying is absolutely right, in as much as, you know, if it does go to appeal,
Yeah,
the inspector is
it is inconsistent.
going to uphold it, basically. So
So we don't object. We put it back into Mendip's court. They're the ones who are going to carry the can if it all goes wrong.
They will.
So we just don't object tonight. Let them
that's up to,
let them deal with it.
yeah, and that's your.
Yeah, I would still like to find out from the case officer why they imposed it in the first place. If there's something we're missing, if we can write to them, but I can't see any reason to object. I must admit, of having what Chris just said.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody could build a kind of flood barrier, you know, and then if there is flooding, they don't get flooded, but their neighbour gets flooded even worse than they would do without. Who knows?
Okay, so
Rich, I know you're. Have you got anything to add? I know you've declared an interest.
I'm only doing this because, you know, Boris Johnson's been all that. I don't want to be seen to be. Yeah, I'd rather. I'm happy with whatever decision you guys make, actually.
Right.
But I think it's only fair, because I'm a trustee of Friends of the River Froome. Friends of the River Froome are the ones that put in the DMMO application for public right of way. So I don't feel comfortable having an opinion at this point.
No, that's fine. No, that's I understand.
So if we defer from commenting at this point in time, I'll ask the case officer if there was any reason that we might be missing that we're not aware of as to why those conditions were imposed. If it is simply as Chris has indicated, then we go back with no objection.
Yeah. Bring it forward to the next one. Yeah.
Should we roll that now?
Didn't go on the other one, actually.
We're not actually making a decision
No.
to vote on.
point.
So,
We'd like some more
Well, thanks
information.
very much, councillors.
Chris, it's good to see you in the flesh, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Right, thanks very much. Thanks, Raj. Thanks for attending. Yeah. Thank you.
okay, so next on the list.
But we're being recorded, everybody.
Yes, we are. So I had identified number 704 on our list, and that's 6 the Cedars Froome, which is for the demolition of a garage and the erection of a 2-storey side extension and the removal of a boundary wall to facilitate vehicular parking. The main reason I raised this one was just because there seemed to be the fact that none of us could see any floor plans on the application.
Civic Society pointed that out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't
Yeah, and
have been validated.
yeah, no, and so it is actually very difficult to properly assess the application. And there was the issue that had been raised, obviously, about a car being parked on the road in the spot that's proposed for the extended drop curb, and just whether or not that would impact on a neighbour or visitor car parking spaces. So I think it's just a case of going back and asking for those plans. Okay, and then after that, I had highlighted number 6, 9, 8 on our list. Lost page.
The bus, isn't it?
And this is 85 butts for the erection of a single-storey rear extension. And again, this was just really for some clarification due to a comment that had been made by one of the neighbours who had suggested that the applicant wasn't going to go ahead with that part of the scheme, which was referring to the balustrade outside, overlooking on the staircase. But it's not clear whether these plans show have removed that element, or whether they still show that element, and whether they still need to be removed. So
they show that element, don't they? But they've got a privacy screen.
So
it's not clear whether they've decided not to remove it and add a privacy screen.
So I think it was just a case of responding on that basis, really, just to clarify what was happening. And then the last one I've raised, I'm pleased to know, is 710 on our list, which is land adjacent to Victoria Cottage, Victoria Road.
Oh, yeah.
And this is for the erection of 2 dwellings, but it's a resubmission of a previous application. So previously there is consent for 9 dwellings on the site already, which is currently being developed. And this application is to slightly revise 2 of those dwellings. And I couldn't necessarily see any issue with the revision, but it was just that we know there have been issues on the site regarding the hours that are being worked, and it was really just to perhaps reiterate our concern about those hours of working to make sure.
The ones that are closest to Victoria Road.
Yes.
The long narrow site.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The end.
Belgrove Works. And yeah. Okay.
Jane's aware of this. I mean, as a ward councillor, I've had quite a few complaints that there's a cabin, they're not supposed to start work before 8 or something like that. Yeah, it's 6 o'clock, and they're using the wrong entrance. There's an agreed in and out, but it's quicker to go the other way. But of course, so they're trying to be quite nice about it, but they're getting 2 fingers up and sworn at when they kind of point out to contractors that this is happening. And I know that Mendip have kind of written back or even possibly visited, but it doesn't seem to have got any better. So if we could say something about that, you know, we hope that the developers will stick to the contracted, the agreed hours of construction. That would add weight and it would show that we've listened to complaints. But I don't actually object to the actual designs are fine. And they don't either, by the way. They just don't want to be woken at 6 in the morning by construction traffic.
Just to point out that we haven't voted on any of those things.
No, I'd noticed that, but
because they're just for math. We're asking for clarification on all
well, I think we can vote on all of the comments that you've made in one go at the end.
Yeah.
That makes
so unless anybody would like to raise any other applications for discussion.
I wondered if we should mention 705. Below Vale one.
Yes.
Only because the Civic Society objected.
It's an interesting one, that, isn't
it? I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I've got them here actually. I can read them out to you.
So just about items number 705 and 706 on our list, and it's the Maltings 3 below valve room And the description is works to internal gantry, windows and roof.
So the Civic Society, they object. The amended form of the roof balcony still appears unsympathetic. The missing panel to the west elevation doesn't read as part of the glazed roof. So the mansard form we had suggested retaining is still rather lost. The unmodulated expanses of glass would be incongruous in this location, and reflections could impact on neighbouring properties. That's their objection.
Yeah, and I think what we've said on the 3 or 4 previous applications that we've seen for this site is a lot of it is internal works, and we felt that it was probably best for the conservation officer to have their input into. I mean, you know, clearly the Civic Society have made some quite clear comments, but that they're sort of more expert in listed buildings or historic buildings potentially.
Really interesting looking building.
It is, isn't it?
I didn't even realise it was there.
It's very challenging, isn't it?
It is very challenging.
And I think what they're proposing to do is obviously an improvement,
Yeah.
but there may well be issues.
Can't really get a feel for it until you're actually in it and see what they're, well, I can't anyway, until you actually see what they're doing in the drawings or whatever. I'm not. I did, yeah. It sounded great, didn't it?
What we said last
To
time.
not have it, yeah. I must have missed it last time. I don't remember.
Yeah, and I remember that I remember the Civic Society objected last time, and you know all that they're saying, and we didn't have much objection.
There's been numerous applications on this particular one, isn't there, over the last 6 months?
It does look fascinating.
It does. Interesting when it's finished. I think we refer to the conservation officer again. Just personally.
If anybody's listening, when it's finished, I'd love to have a look around.
Yes.
Please, yeah. Great. Anything else? I think we should just vote on.
Yeah, we need to vote on.
We vote on everything, including the comments and the deferrals that we've made, and follow up on those.
Yeah.
So if someone could propose that for me. Thank you, Mark. Seconded by Paul.
And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, it's nice to have people here in person, isn't it? I think.
No, it is.
No, it was. It is.
It's a bit odd as well.
It is a bit odd, yeah.
Yeah.
The next meeting?
Just about to say that. To be Thursday, the 9th of December is